The ACC is loaded with quarterback talent in 2025, and some of them are transfers, some are new starters, and some are returning after starting last year. In today's video, we're going to do my annual video where I break down each and every starting quarterback from a particular conference, and today we're going to start the series out with the ACC. We're going to go through each and every guy, talk about who they are, and then ultimately I'm going to rank them. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you can support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's go ahead and get started and rank every starting quarterback in the ACC for 2025. Alright, so number 17 we have Elijah Brown from Stanford. The Cardinal move on from Ashton Daniels at quarterback finally, and under first-year head coach Frank Reich, he will have a really good player to work with in Elijah Brown. He came out of Mater Dei High School in Santa Ana, California, and he was a 4-star recruit in the class of 2024 and the number 11 overall quarterback. Brown put up incredible numbers while he was in high school, as he had nearly 8,800 yards with over 100 touchdown passes, but last year he only played in 3 total games, making 1 start against Wake Forest. Last year in total, Brown finished with 274 yards with 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, and he got his feet wet, but he'll have to improve a lot in 2025, plus Stanford's in a terrible spot, so that's why I have him at number 17. At number 16, we have the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, who have a quarterback battle going on between Deshaun Purdy and Robbie Ashford. They will have to replace production from Hank Bachmeier, and I honestly think Purdy will probably be the starter. Coming out of Milford Mill Academy, Purdy was an underrated recruit in the class of 2024, and he ended up going to Charlotte. Purdy passed for just under 2,000 yards and also combined for 11 touchdowns. He entered the portal and originally went to Florida, but then backed out and transferred to Wake Forest. Robbie Ashford, on the other hand, was a 4-star recruit back in time, spent a year at Oregon, then went to Auburn for a couple of years, and then started a couple of games for South Carolina when Lenora Sellers was hurt. We sort of know what we are getting with Ashford, and he's not really all that great, as he's just a good athlete, but he might get the starting job just due to experience, but Purdy is the better long-term player for them. I remember a couple years ago when On3 ranked Devin Brown as their number 1 quarterback in the country, and now he is at Cal. After putting up big numbers at Corner Canyon High School in Utah, Brown would arrive at Ohio State, but never really got a chance to play much. He started 1 game against Mizzou in their bowl game and ended up getting hurt, and finished with just over 300 yards and 4 total touchdowns in 3 total seasons in Columbus. Brown now transfers over to Cal, where he will face off with one of the best quarterbacks in Hawaii football history, in Jaron Kiawe Sagabatelli. At one point, he was a near 5-star recruit and would commit to Oregon, but after just a couple of weeks there, he would go back to Cal. He had originally committed to the Golden Bears, but maybe seeing Fernando Mendoza's rise, he decided to flip to Oregon. I have no idea what happened there. But either way, those two are battling it out for the starting job, and I think Brown probably wins it, and at best is ranked as the 15th best quarterback in the conference. At number 14, we have the quarterback battle going on at Boston College, as Thomas Castellanos has now gone off to Florida State. The frontrunner for the job is going to be Grayson James, as coming out of Duncanville High School in Texas, James was a 3-star recruit in the class of 2021 and would arrive at Florida International. They're obviously one of the worst programs in all of college football, but James would have nearly 2,000 yards and over 12 touchdowns there before transferring to Boston College last year, where in limited time, he threw for 1,200 yards and 6 scores. He replaced Castellanos. He's probably the frontrunner for the job, but Bill O'Brien brings in his former big-time recruit in Dylan Lonergan, who was a 4-star recruit from Brookwood High School in Georgia. He originally arrived at Alabama in 2023, but after sitting on the bench, he has now transferred to Boston College, where he will battle it out with James, and while I think James will be the starter this year, Lonergan is their best option for the future, and a starter has not yet been named. Bill Belichick has been in the news a lot the last couple of months, but he does have a decent quarterback in Gio Lopez. Going back in time, Lopez was a 3-star recruit from James Clemens High School in Alabama and would arrive at South Alabama. Over the last couple of years, he's played a bit, and he started in 2024, throwing for just over 2,600 yards and 18 touchdowns, while also rushing for nearly 500 yards and 7 scores on the ground. Lopez decided to transfer in this past spring, and he'll likely be the number 1 quarterback for Bill Belichick, but Max Johnson, Bryce Baker, and Torrey Newkirk are also fighting for that job. I still think it's Gio's job to lose though, and I don't have much of a reason to rank him higher than where he is. At number 12, we have the most annoying quarterback in college football in Thomas Castellanos, as he ended up going to Ware County High School and was offered in middle school, and while he put up an insane amount of all-purpose yards in high school, he ultimately was a 3-star and went to UCF. After starting 1 or 2 games for the Knights, Castellanos would transfer to Boston College ahead of the 2023 season, and then would end up being the backup. Halfway through the first game though, he would take over as the starter and then have a really good season, throwing for a total of 2,200 yards with 15 touchdowns, but unfortunately he had an insanely high 14 turnovers. He also rushed for 1,100 yards and 13 touchdowns and became the first Boston College quarterback to ever throw for over 2,000 and rush for over 1,000 in a season. He had a decent amount of hype for 2024, but after throwing for 1,300 yards and 18 touchdowns, he was benched. He didn't like Bill O'Brien's new system, so he decided to quit on the team. Grayson James took over for him, and Florida State thinks it's a good idea to get him out of the portal and make him their starter. I'm not quite sure what they're doing, as Mike Norvell's job is on the line, and he's putting his faith in a guy who is not very good or very loyal. I don't mean to hate on Castellanos, but I don't think he's all that good, and we'll see what he can do this year. At number 11, we have the quarterback battle going on at Syracuse, as that'll be between Steve Angeli and Ricky Collins. Angeli originally started his career at Notre Dame, and he became a 4-star recruit. He sat on the bench for the last couple of years, only coming in mop-up duty. Many thought Angeli could be the starter this year, but it looked like he was getting beat out by both Kenny Minchey and CJ Carr, so he entered the spring portal window, where he's now at Syracuse. They'll have to replace Kyle McCord, and they have another option in Ricky Collins Jr., who is also a 4-star recruit coming out of high school and has spent some time as a backup at LSU. Collins is honestly a better athlete, but Angeli is a better pure passer. I have no idea what Fran Brown is going to decide to do, but either way, I like both of these options, and they each have a high ceiling. Ranked right in front of him, we have a guy that I consider a portal abuser in Chandler Morris. He's the son of former legendary head coach Chad Morris at Arkansas, and after coming out of Highland Park, Texas, he put up crazy numbers and would arrive at Oklahoma. Ultimately, things would not work out there, as he passed for a total of 39 yards before transferring to TCU, but Oklahoma originally tried to block that. Ultimately, it got overturned, and in his first 2 years at TCU, he was the starter, but then eventually got replaced by Max Duggan, and in 1 year, it was due to an injury. In 2023, he threw for 1,500 yards before being replaced by Josh Hoover, and he would transfer to North Texas. This past season, he became one of the better quarterbacks in the group of 5, throwing for 3,774 yards with 31 touchdowns, and helped put North Texas football back on the map. Having 1 more year of eligibility, he will now transfer over to Virginia. Virginia has not had good quarterback play the last few years, so he's probably the best that we've seen in recent memory, but we'll have to wait and see how he does. One of my favorite quarterbacks in the ACC for 2025 is going to be Kyron Drones, as he ended up going to Shadow Creek High School, where he had over 7,000 all-purpose yards and 71 touchdowns. He was a 4-star recruit and would decide to commit to Baylor. After a couple of years at Baylor, he never saw the field, so he transferred to Virginia Tech ahead of the 2023 season. Ultimately, he would take over by the end of it, passing for over 2,000 yards and 17 touchdowns, and running for just under 1,000 yards as well. He was considered one of the better quarterbacks going into 2024, and Virginia Tech had a lot of hype, but unfortunately they would flounder in week 1 against Vanderbilt, and it was all downhill from there. Drones ended up passing for 1,600 yards with 10 touchdowns, and only ran for about 300 yards on the ground. He still has a lot of potential and is a good player, but he will have to fix some things and improve for 2025 if he wants a chance at going off to the NFL still. Number 8, we have Cedric Bailey, as he was a 4-star recruit in the class of 2024 by way of Chaminade Madonna High School, which was located in Florida. At 6'6", CJ Bailey was thrusted into action early after passing for over 9,000 yards and 116 touchdowns in his high school career, so he was ready. Grayson McCall suffered that terrible injury, so Bailey came in last year and ended up throwing for 2,400 yards with 17 touchdowns and also ran for 5 more on the ground. He was arguably one of the best true freshman quarterbacks in all of college football last year and should be a lot better in 2025. I hope he takes that next step and helps get NC State football back to rolling. At number 7, we have Duke's new starting quarterback in Darian Mensah, as he came out of St. Joseph High School in California and was only a 3-star recruit. He ended up having 2,200 yards and 25 touchdowns his senior season, and the 3-star would end up at Tulane. After spending 1 year as the backup to Michael Pratt, he beat out a couple of other highly ranked guys and threw for 2,723 yards with 22 touchdowns. He helped Tulane have a decent season, but for some unknown reason, people think he's worth $8 million. There were some rumors that Mensah got one of the most expensive NIL deals in the country, and again, I don't really know why. And the best part about it is the guy he's replacing, Malik Murphy, is pretty much the same player as him. Honestly, I didn't think Murphy was all that bad, but Duke is going all in on Darian Mensah, and they think he can develop quite nicely over the next 2 years and really help Duke take the next step. We'll have to wait and see though. Ranked right ahead of him at number 6 will be Pitt quarterback Eli Holstein. He was a first-year starter last year, but going back in time, he went to Zachary High School, which was located in Alabama, and he ended up putting up really good numbers while he was there. He had over 7,000 yards and 62 touchdowns as a 3-year starter, and the 4-star recruit would head over to Alabama. Holstein would never get a chance to play there, and after just one season, he would transfer to Pitt. He ended up beating out Nate Yarnell for the starting job, and this past season, he threw for 2,200 yards with 17 touchdowns, and he also ran for over 300 yards and 3 scores as well. Unfortunately, Pitt got off to a great 7-0 start, but they completely fell apart in the last half of the season, and Holstein also struggled with injuries. We'll see if both him and Pitt can bounce back in a big way in 2025, and for now I think he's a pretty solid quarterback and deserves to be in the top 8. At number 5, we get into our quote-unquote Tier 1 list of quarterbacks, and the first guy is going to be Miller Moss. Coming out of the state of California, Moss would end up becoming a 4-star recruit and commit to USC. His first couple of years were interesting as he came in the same class as Jackson Dart, so he was sort of stuck on the bench his first year, but then became the backup to Caleb Williams in 2022 and 2023. He'd get his big break in the bowl season of 2023 as against Louisville. He'd have one of the most incredible performances in bowl game history, and that would set the tone for his 2024 season, but unfortunately, he wasn't all that good. Moss passed for 2,500 yards and 18 touchdowns, but he was later benched in favor of Jaden Mayava. Mayava, I guess, is the guy that Lincoln Riley is moving forward with, and they brought in 5-star Hussan Longstreet, so Miller Moss decided to transfer over to Louisville, where he will be the 3rd straight 6th-year journeyman quarterback. The last 2 guys were Jack Plummer and Tyler Shuck, and both of them were successful in that system, so there's no reason not to believe that Moss won't have the same success, and we'll see what he can do this year. Quarterback Kevin Jennings was instrumental in SMU's rise to getting to the college football playoff, but he didn't even start out the year as a starter. Going back in time, he was just a 3-star recruit coming out of South Oak Cliff High School, and while he did have good numbers, no one really expected him to do anything. He did not play much in 2022 or 2023, but after Preston Stone struggled, Jennings would end up taking over for the remainder of the season, and he threw for 3,200 yards with 23 touchdowns. He also was a decent player on the ground, and more importantly led SMU to the college football playoff. While he was atrocious against Penn State, he proved that he was a top-end quarterback, and apparently Alabama tried to poach him in the offseason, and some other schools did too, but he decided to return to SMU and will now be one of the top-ranked quarterbacks in the conference and in the country. At number 3, we have Haynes King. As coming out of Longview High School in Texas, he was the son of a high school football coach and became dang near a 5-star recruit. King would arrive at Texas A&M in 2020 and was supposed to be the guy in 2021, but would suffer a leg injury against Colorado. The same thing sort of happened in 2022, as things did not go according to plan, and then he would decide to transfer over to Georgia Tech. King has now started 2 years for the Yellow Jackets and has been incredible. He passed for nearly 2,800 yards and 27 touchdowns in 2023, and he was also a threat on the ground. He continued in 2024, throwing for over 2,100 yards and 14 touchdowns, while cutting his interceptions from 16 to 2, and also running for 11 touchdowns. Haynes King is one of the best returning quarterbacks in college football, and might be the most underrated. At number 2, we have Carson Beck. Everybody has their opinion on Carson Beck, but going back in time, he was a 4-star recruit coming out of the city of Jacksonville, and he wanted to play both football and baseball, but ultimately he settled on football. The 4-star recruit arrived at Georgia in 2021, but would not really play until 2023. In his first year as a starter, Beck threw for just under 4,000 yards with 24 touchdowns. He could have easily gone off to the NFL, but he decided to stick around for one more year, where he was a mixed bag. He threw for 3,500 yards and 28 touchdowns last year, but he disappeared in a couple of key games, doubled his interceptions number, and just sometimes looked completely lost. Instead of going off to the NFL again, he decided to enter the transfer portal, where he's now getting a huge payday from Miami to try to replicate what Cam Ward did last year. A lot of people consider Carson Beck to be the villain of college football right now, and it'll make for good TV, and we'll see how he does this year. And finally, at number 1, we have Cade Klubnik. Coming out of the prestigious Austin Westlake High School, Cade Klubnik pretty much never lost a high school football game and put up crazy numbers. After losing out on Ty Simpson, Clemson decided to go all in on Cade Klubnik, and he ended up being bumped up to the number 1 quarterback in the country. Klubnik would start out on the bench behind DJ in 2022, but he's now taken over as a starter the last 2 years. He was solid in 2023, throwing for 2,800 yards and 19 touchdowns, but he really played his best football last year, throwing for 3,700 yards and 36 touchdowns, while also rushing for nearly 500 yards and 7 scores on the ground, plus leading Clemson to the college football playoff. Now he returns as arguably the best quarterback in college football for this year. Clemson has national title hopes, and he's also being projected on some sites to go number 1 overall. We'll see if he lives up to the hype, but for now he takes the place at number 1. But what do you guys think? What do you agree and disagree with? Who is your favorite quarterback in the ACC for 2025, and which conference should I do next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out one of the videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.